Hello, good morning. This is Marilyn Walker. I am the operations manager here at Homer Energy. I paused over that because I was the chief operating officer until we sold the company to UL last month. You can see the press release there. So today's educational webinar introduces one of the most exciting new features since we first rolled out Homer Grid, the Homer Grid proposal tool, which lets you generate a professional report from your project data inside Homer Grid in seconds. Like I said, I'm the operations manager here at Homer Energy. I was one of the founders, and I'm excited to be with you here today and really appreciate you showing up. So we offer these monthly educational webinars. We held off a bit while we were busy with other things, but we're back now. And we want to keep you up to date with what's happening in the world of Homer and how to best use the Homer software, our services around the software, and also sometimes our close partners who offer products and services that we think add value to your experience and business. So today's main webinar presenters, I'm going to be the host, but we have Arbi Madhavan, our Associate Product Manager. She's going to present an example of creating a Homer Grid client proposal for a Boston hospital that's experiencing gas prices and also wants to consider joining a demand response program. Then Steffi Clauter, our product manager, will present an example of a city building in California that wants to consider how to model a system for increased reliability during longer outages. So these are two really different kinds of examples of how to use Homer Grid, both as a modeling tool and then also how to present a report. For those of you new to Homer, it's an acronym for Hybrid Optimization of Multiple Energy Resources. The Homer approach includes three different processes nested together. At its core, Homer is a simulation engine. It simulates the operation of an electric power system for 1 year, hour by hour, or minute by minute. At each time step, Homer looks for the most cost-effective way to meet the electric load based on the set of constraints that the user defines. Simulation tells you how one system operates, and then the optimization step simulates hundreds of different systems to find the least cost system. Homer also has an option to do sensitivity analyses, which allow you to look at the impact changes in variables that you don't have control over, such as fuel price or wind speed, have on your system design and system costs. Using Homer to design and optimize your microgrid or distributed hybrid energy system has three main steps. First, you provide information on the economics, interest rate, etc., with your energy demand profiles, your location, and that's going to tell Homer the renewable resources, solar radiation and wind speed, which it can then go download from the internet, or you can upload your own data, and the types of equipment to consider, shown here as the system components. Homer then steps through the three nested processes I talked about in the last slide: simulation, optimization, and sensitivity. And then it provides detailed results, not only on the economics of the system, but also on exactly what's going on, literally in every hour or even every minute, if that's what you need to know. So we now have two versions of Homer available. This has been over a year now. Homer Pro, our original product and still our flagship, with broad applications for microgrids in many markets. Today, we're focusing on our newer product, Homer Grid, which was designed explicitly for behind-the-meter systems in grid-connected markets, where demand charge reduction, time of use rates, maximizing self-consumption, incentives, resiliency, reliability, or some combination of these are what matters the most. When you consider the number of different value streams that can be modeled in Homer Grid, with the number of different components it can model, there's truly really nothing else close to this tool on the market. So, I'm really proud of it. And I'm really proud of what Steffi and Arbi are going to present to you today. So the proposal tool that we'll be demonstrating today is part of the Homer Grid 1.7 product release. And Homer Grid 1.7 is available today in beta, and the general release is going to come out sometime this week. They're in the final stages of just tweaking it to make sure it's perfect, maybe as early as tomorrow. I'm not sure on that exactly. But the 1.7 release contains another important feature I just want to mention, which is the ability to model your own controller in HomerGrid via an API. You can do this directly in the product using MATLAB, similarly to how this works in Homer Pro. And then if you need to distribute your control algorithm, there's also a mechanism to do that. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Arabi now, who's going to walk us through the first example.
So let's look at creating a client proposal. For this example, consider a hypothetical company called Solar Success. This company is based out of Boston and they manufacture commercial size solar panels and inverters. They use HomerGrid to size their application. Now let's say I'm a sales manager at Solar Success. And my goal as a sales manager is A, to sell more panels and inverters, and B, to distinguish Solar Success from our competitors. One of my potential clients is a hospital in Boston, and I'm preparing this pitch for Jane, the director of Boston Medical Center. She's in charge of facility maintenance. This hospital has two types of consumption, electric and thermal. So what would the goals of my client be? They're probably most concerned about how to reduce their electric utility bill, and they would also like to protect themselves against any unknown gas prices in the future. Now, based on some research I've done, the utility in Boston, National Grid, also has a demand response program. This allows the utility to pay an incentive to their customers for reducing demand at certain peak events. So when I'm pitching to this client, some of the value streams I would want to highlight are energy charge savings, demand charge reductions, and demand response revenue. So let's create this proposal using HomerGrid 1.7. I'm going to start off by opening a new Homer file and entering the location for Boston Medical Center. My next step is to add the electric load. I'll be using the OpenAI database to download a typical load profile for a hospital in this location. As you can see on the schematic on the right, this electric load has a peak of 1,500 kilowatts and a scaled annual average of 26,000 kilowatt hours per day. I can now go ahead and add the electricity tariff. As you might know, Boston is a deregulated market, allowing a choice of many generation utilities. I want to select a distribution-only tariff that I can access by clicking no to the question, does the same company provide both generation and distribution? I'll be then selecting the general time of use tariff. And as I mentioned, this is a distribution-only tariff. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to be entering a flat generation rate of 9 cents per kilowatt hour. Now let's take a second to look at the breakdown of charges. This tariff has consumption prices, demand charges, fixed charges, and others. You can click on tariff bill to visualize the breakdown of charges by month and also by the different categories. If you look at the heat map, you can see that the demand rate during the summer is $24 per kilowatt, but it drops during the winter months around $18 per kilowatt. So it's definitely a value for demand charge reduction in this tariff. My next step is to add a PV panel. And I would like to add my company's Solar Success panels to this model. I can see that Homer is prompting me to add a solar resource. I can download this resource from either the NREL or the NASA database. I would also like to explore the possibility of adding a lithium-ion battery to this model. And as I said, this hospital in Boston has both electric and thermal load. So I want to add a generic CHP generator to this model. I'm going to enter a few size options over here. I'm going to jump ahead to the CHP section. I still need to add a thermal load, and I can access a typical thermal load profile, again using the OpenAI database. Find the hospital in Boston. So this thermal load on the right, you can see over here, has a peak of 1,400 kilowatts and a scaled annual average of 12,000 kilowatt hours per day. The next step is to add the boiler. So I want to explore how the size of my panels is affected by a change in the natural gas price. So for this, I'm going to perform a sensitivity analysis. Let's say the price right now is 20 cents per meter cube, and later there's a change to around triple the size, that is 60 cents per meter cube. Now, as I mentioned, the National Grid has a demand response program. And this program applies to commercial and industrial customers and offers an incentive for customers when they reduce their electric use on peak event periods. I'm interested in modeling the targeted dispatch, in which the hospital could get a $35 incentive for every kilowatt reduced during the peak events. And approximately 2 to 8 events occur in the months June, July, August, and September. And each event lasts for around 3 hours. So let's model this using HomerGrid. So under programs, you can see the demand response events. So in this section, you can see 2 panels. The one on the left is where you would enter inputs regarding your cost and bid. And the panel on the right is specifying when those peak events would occur. So I want to find out how lucrative it is to sign up for this demand response program. So I'm going to be performing a sensitivity analysis on with and without this demand response incentive. And I know that these events occur starting June 1st and end by September 30th. The website mentioned an average of 8 events in the season. And each event lasts for a period of 3 hours. So now let's look at the results for this model. Since it's a fairly complex model and it's going to take some time to run, I'm going to be pulling up saved results for this. So over here, you can see 2 tables. The one on top is the sensitivity cases table. Selecting a sensitivity would change the optimization results table in the bottom. As you might remember, we had sensitivity on 2 variables, the demand response incentive and the natural gas fuel price. So when the natural gas price is low, 20 cents per meter cube, HomerGrid recommends a 1,000 kilowatt CHP generator and a smaller PV size, around 2,500 kilowatts, with a battery of 152 kilowatt hours of lithium ion. Now, as the gas price increases to 60 cents per meter cube, you can see that HomerGrid has increased the PV size to around 4,000 kilowatts and reduced the CHP generator size to 500 kilowatts. Now let's shift our focus to the demand response incentive. A point to note over here, HomerGrid adds any incentive revenue you receive in this program to your demand charges. So your demand charges on your utility bill will reduce if you sign up for this program. And you can see that over here. Let's take the first sensitivity, where you've not signed up for this program. So you're getting $0 of incentive. In this case, the demand charge savings is $267,000 per year. If you look at the next sensitivity of $35 per kilowatt incentive, the demand charge savings over here is almost double that, $435,000 per year. So I would like to create a proposal now to Boston Medical Center. And 2 of the value streams I want to highlight are savings due to demand response incentive and the change in natural gas price. So I'm going to be picking that sensitivity. I'll be picking now the winning system to create the proposal. And that's a system with the least net present cost. To create a proposal, click on the button that says Simulation Report on the bottom left. And this opens up a wizard where I can select from 2 styles of report, the client proposal and the engineering detail. The client proposal is a new style of proposal report releasing with Grid 1.7. And this can be used to pitch your system design to potential client or investors. As you proceed through this wizard, you can see that this is more of a slick, attractive looking report with opportunity to brand your company and services. The engineering detail report, on the other hand, has a lot more technical detailed information on how each component performs in this model. If you're an existing HomoGrid user, then you might be familiar with the engineering detail report. Now let's create a client proposal report. I'm going to be entering the name of my client and her title. In the next section is information on the person and company preparing this report. So I can enter my information over here. So this tab is to include any information regarding the company that's preparing this report. My final tab, I can choose to add any customer testimonials. And I have selected 2 customer testimonials from past clients who can vouch for the credibility of solar success. So in this section, I can choose to reorder the sections, or I can even choose not to include certain sections in the report. If I want to reorder them, I can just drag and drop and change the section order, or I can reposition it using the arrows on the bottom right. So anytime you open a new HomoGrid file, you'll have the same preference of section order that's saved. My next step is to choose a paper size and create the report. So the report that is created is opened in a Word document. For the sake of viewing for this webinar, I'm going to be opening the same document in a PDF format. So the first page of the report, the cover page, highlights that this is a customized report prepared for Jane, the Director of Boston Medical Services, and also gives the location of the project facility and prepared by whom. It also gives some information about HomoGrid, the tool used to size this project and create the report. After the table of contents, we have the project summary. And this gives a quick snapshot of the current versus proposed system. So this medical center currently has a grid connection, and Solar Success is proposing installing 4,000 kilowatts of PV, 500 kilowatts of generator, and 167 kilowatt hours of battery capacity. In the graph, you can see, you can compare the cash flows between the 2 systems, the current and the proposed system. You also get economic details, such as installing the proposed system would give you annualized savings of $1 million and a return on investment of 9% and an internal rate of return of 13%. The next section is marketing about the company preparing this report. So this is description that we had pasted regarding Solar Success and customer testimonials on it. So this is a really important section regarding savings summary. So let me zoom in a bit over here. So this proposed system provides many value streams to this client. So the first value stream is the demand charge reduction, and that gives us a savings of $372,000 per year. The next significant savings is through reducing your energy consumption, and that gives a massive savings of $806,000 per year. The next value stream is through the demand response program, which gives a savings of $229,000 per year. And installing the system also has cost. So there are some negative costs regarding O&M and replacement. Putting all the value streams together, you have a total annualized savings of $1 million. You can also look into the breakdown of utility bill. You can compare how the current case utility bill and then how the proposed case utility bill has reduced from that. This section gives you the demand response breakdown. We know that 8 events occurred during the summer, and you can see for each of those events, how much has HomoGrid been able to reduce and how much revenue we have received from the utility for that reduction. You can also get further details regarding the consumption summary, engineering details regarding each component that the proposed system has installed, detailed cash flow across the project lifetime, and utility bill breakdown. You also have some explanation of terms used in this report. So this is a sample proposal report that can be given to a client at Boston Medical Center, and it highlights the value that the solar panel from Solar Success can provide to their facility. Okay, handing it over back to you, Melon.
All right, actually, I'll take over from here. Thank you, Arby. That was a great example of the powerful tool that we're now releasing in the latest version of Homer Grid. So I'm going to go through a second case study, which shows a couple different value streams that you can model within Homer Grid. Marilyn mentioned at the beginning the different value streams that Homer Grid accounts for is demand charge reduction, time of use arbitrage, self-consumption, demand response, reliability, and resilience. So in the example that I'll go through today with you, I am going to be focusing on how to model the value of resilience. So I'm designing a distributed generation system for the Justice Building in Bakersfield, California. I am with a consulting group that does energy analysis, and I'm providing a list of options to my client or potential client who works at the city of Bakersfield, California. I know that I'm appealing to someone who's wanting to reduce utility bills and also potentially ride through some minor outages. Additionally, I want to present an opportunity for riding through 2 days of outages, a resilience case. So I'm going to present these different options to my potential client using the proposal tool to display the value of a hybrid system. So moving on to Homer Grid, I'll go through the file that I've set up here. I've set it at the Justice Building, and they've used that to pull the resources. I've defined an electric load, and actually I've divided it into a critical and a non-critical load. I've said that there's 2 different load profiles, and they're the same profile, so they have the same pattern of usage in that in this DMAP or heat map, you can see the time of day here and the day of the year. And these are common within Homer. You can generally read this as the vertical stripes are the weekends. You can see how there's reduced load on the weekends, and you can see how the middle of the year has a bit higher energy usage. And you can see that generally there's a trend of operating hours between, say, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So all this you can get very quickly out of the DMAP formats. So here's my critical load and non-critical load. You can see them both in the schematic, and you can see how I've changed the scaled annual average so that 40% is the critical load and 60% is the non-critical load. So in this system, I know that the utility I'm approaching is on a certain tariff, and I can verify that I've pulled the correct tariff from the database by looking through the expected consumption and demand charges, but also by comparing the facility to, I have the monthly bills. So I can see that in January, we would spend approximately $40,000 on energy, or on our utility bill, broken down into 26 for energy and 15 for demand. So this is how I can fact check my system before I start. Moving on down the list here, I've set up my PV system, and I want to consider, in this case, both rooftop PV and ground mount PV. And so I've set some upper limit boundaries for the optimizer to consider based on the sizing constraints of my site. And I've priced these differently. So rooftop has a different price per kilowatt than ground mount. The cost table here is very important in Homer, and it would account for the economies of scale. But within this range, I would only like to consider 1 cost per kilowatt in this system. So that's a complexity that you can build in or use the library to have an example of the generic pricing. And in this system, I know that I want to design, let's see, a system which is DC coupled. So I want to set the PV panels and the battery on the DC bus, and I'm going to only allow the PV to charge the battery. And so how I do that is by setting a converter. And in order to ensure that the grid does not charge the battery, so the energy does not flow from the grid to the battery, I'm going to set a relative capacity for the rectifier of 0%. So that will ensure that just the solar is charging the battery. And it's kind of an advanced feature, but we get some questions about how to ensure that your system is ITC eligible, for example, or people that don't want to have the grid charging the battery. They can use this setup to model that. And then the final thing in my system is my battery. I've just used the generic library item with its cost table, and we'll let Homer Optimizer size the system. So given these are the potential technologies that I'm going to use to mitigate the utility bills, I also want to model that other value stream of outages. So I know that for my system, there are some random outages that occur. And historically, I know that this is approximately 10 per year with an average mean, with a mean repair time of 1 hour. And there's some variability in how long the utility grid is down for. And I know that these are somewhat costly. I don't know exactly how to put a value in terms of dollars on avoiding these small outages. But how you would do this in Homer is to set up a cost per outage, and you can do that in terms of hour, or you can do that in terms of a cost per missed kilowatt hour. And you define that within these outage settings here. So here's where I've defined a couple different penalties. And as RB showed, this is our interface for sensitivity analyses, which helps you estimate risk. So in this example, I've got a downtime penalty of $0, $1,000, or $10,000 per hour. I'm going to run the different simulations under these conditions. And it is an advanced feature, but linking sensitivities will help your model run quicker. So something that really slows down runtime is to build up a lot of sensitivity variables. So linking them can help reduce the runtime. So in the case with $0 penalty, I've set up a case where I'm not allowing any downtime from the grid, or I'm not allowing any shortage in my load that's served, versus if there's no penalty and there's a small allowance, so that this would be kind of our base case where the outage comes and there's no way to mitigate against it. So we have to allow some downtime. And then what we're testing is what is the value of reliability. So we're testing, is it $1,000 per hour or is it $10,000 an hour? So Homer is going to run each of these cases. And in Homer, we've kind of described outages in 2 different ways. So we went over the reliability case, which are short outages, which happen, randomly throughout the year, versus a resilience outage, which happens for multiple days and may not happen every year. So in this model, I would like to go back to the facilities manager with the city of Bakersfield and say, here's their system, which will ride through 2 days of utility downtime. And I want him or her to be able to look at the costs and look at the values and understand and make an educated choice about which system to go with based on these additional value streams that would be provided. So now that I've set up my system, I would go to the results. And I won't recalculate. I've already calculated them. So in this example, the top table is the different sensitivity cases that I've laid out. So you can see what we talked about was the outage duration of the resilience event versus these are linked sensitivities and the penalty. So $0 penalty, $1,000 penalty, $10,000 penalty. So what you'll notice in what it's displaying in this top table is the winning architecture, the system with the lowest net present cost. So you'll notice that approximately my PV system has maxed out to the size of the max rooftop available and the size of the max carport available. But what's interesting is the recommended size of the battery. So here we can see how the size of the battery may vary based on these different system configurations that we are testing. And a good way to see quick intuitive results for multiple sensitivity cases is through the graphical results. So this may display differently if you don't use sensitivity variables or if you only have one sensitivity variable. But in my case with two sensitivity variables, I'm going to show this surface plot here. And what it's showing is on the y-axis is the duration of the resilience events, 0 to 2 days, versus what my penalty is, $0, $1,000, $10,000 per downtime. And what you can see quickly here is that the size of the storage, which is reflected in the colors and also in these little numbers, the size of the storage increases as the cost of the outage becomes higher, which makes sense, and the size of the storage increases as the requirement for the length of your resilience event increases. So these are great ways that you can get an overview of the various different sensitivity analyses that you run. And a way that you could use this further is to export this image, and you could incorporate that into your future proposal or into a Word document as you need. So focusing back on just one system, say that we've assumed that we're going to go with the 2-day resilience case. We want to have some resilience capabilities. And actually we don't want to consider what that downtime penalty would be. So we would present potentially this system, this winning system, to our facilities manager, the facilities manager at Bakersfield, our potential client. So diving deep into this example, the same high-level information is available here. And if we wanted to make a report of it, we'd go to the simulation report. The report that you're familiar with, as already mentioned, if you're a current user, is the engineering details report, and the new feature is the client proposal. So you'd go fill out your client name here. And she is the facilities manager at this site. The program, once you fill it in for the first time, it will save your information. So that's a handy feature that your Homer Grid profile will save your company's information, so you don't have to fill this out every time. It's just a great way to save time, really make this slick. So going through here, you can also save and customize the sections and the order in which they are presented in the report. and that will save to your profile as well. So we've really made attempts to make this a very slick process that you can use easily and quickly. And this is just one of the customizing features that we offer. So we're going to open up that report. And it does take just a minute. Here it is. All right, so looking at this report, we can see the cover page, the table of contents, and then dive into everything that you would want to communicate at a high level to your client. Your specific branding, what value streams and what utility savings are offered. And here are the savings details that can be offered through resilience and reliability. So this will help your client to get a really great understanding of the different opportunities available to him or her. And it would really, yeah, it's the professional way to present your company and yourself, and HomerGrid helps you do that. All right, so I think that we've gone over some advanced features in the context of building them out in HomerGrid. We've gone with RB, we've talked about demand response and how to evaluate, how to choose whether to participate in a demand response program. And then in my example, we went over a DC coupled PV and storage system and how to model the value of reliability and resilience, as well as how to handle multiple sensitivity variables. So kind of some advanced topics, and the main point is to see what a great proposal that can come of it. We've got some great questions. Feel free to type them in. We do have, a couple minutes now that we'll answer some ones that we feel are relevant to everyone. For example, could we customize the content of the proposal? And I think the answer is yes. So you can customize it. You can customize the contents of it, the order of it, your company's branding, and the information of the recipient of this proposal. So there's many customizing features available, and we are excited to be expanding upon those based on your feedback. Another question is it possible to customize the report further, such as changing the HomerGrid logo from the report? And yes, all of that would be done in Word as you go forward. So we've decided to make this report available in Word so that you have the full capabilities that Word offers. And from Word, you can make it into a PDF report if that is the format that you'd prefer. So right now, this new feature is available as a Word output, and that's where you can further customize everything about it, the header and the footer and the order of things and additional information. One question about this piece, which will be available shortly, is that the proposal tool actually isn't the only new feature. We also are proud to announce that we have a custom controller feature. So within HomerGrid, you had the option to use kind of the internal controller, peak shaving controller, which was specifically designed to reduce demand charges. However, many people have really wanted to dive in deep and control exactly when the battery should be dispatched, when the generator is allowed to operate, all of that. And if you really want to dive in deep, you can use MATLAB and use the MATLAB logic to control how a simulation is run. So that will offer complete flexibility to really our advanced users. All right, there's a lot of great questions. Thank you for your patience while I read through them. One more is will this be added to Homer Pro? And the answer is yes, based on your feedback, of course. We are actively improving both Homer Pro and Homer Grid. We are supporting both products. And based on the reception for this proposal tool, we will prioritize adding this into Homer Pro within the near future. So feel free to contact us in any way and submit your comments and preferences, and that really drives our roadmap because we're very customer centric. One question is, can we create reports for Africa? Absolutely. So you can absolutely create a report for Africa. It's not the examples we gave were US centric, and Homer Grid is not US centric. Actually, it's meant for people, for systems with a reliable utility grid if you're designing a system around demand charge reduction. That doesn't mean that it's only for the US market. You can absolutely create a proposal for an African project. However, if you're considering maybe an unreliable grid or grid extension, Homer Pro may be a better tool for you to do the energy access or rural electrification use case. So we have customers actually all over the world using both Homer Pro and Homer Grid. One thing to note is that the tariff database, which is incorporated in Homer Grid, only covers North America, but we've invested a lot of time and effort into developing our tariff builder capabilities so that all international users have what they need in order to model a grid-connected system.
The question that we received is, can Homer generate the report docx file without Word being installed on the system? Currently, the answer is no. You will need to have Microsoft Word installed on your computer to be able to view this report.
We've gotten a couple questions about hydrogen modeling, and Homer Pro is really the tool for that. So yeah, so if you have hydrogen modeling needs, check out Homer Pro. Homer Grid does not accommodate hydrogen modeling at this point. Another question is, does Homer Grid allow you to import designs from Helioscope? And yeah, both Homer Grid and Homer Pro have this feature where in your PV, you can type in your Helioscope credentials, log into your account, select a project, and that will pull over the production data from Helioscope, and you can continue modeling within Homer Grid as you normally would. So we really support, different modeling softwares. We want to help you in your job. So if you prefer using Helioscope or PVsyst or whatever PV modeling tool is out there, we have this way to either import a production data file, or in Helioscope's case, you can log into your account, and that's an easy way to pull over data. So one question, very important, is what's the difference between Homer Pro versus Homer Grid? So this webinar was all about Homer Grid, and that's focused on behind the meter grid connected systems, which are looking to reduce utility bills primarily through demand charge reduction and energy arbitrage or self-consumption. Homer Grid or Homer Pro is the flagship product, which you may be more familiar with. It is for designing microgrids of all shapes and sizes, and it has kind of a broader array of technologies which you can consider, such as hydrogen, as I mentioned. Homer Grid is more focused on the issues facing distributed generation for stable grids. Homer Pro is more suited to considering many different systems, including grid extension, including rural electrification, island utilities. It's a much broader set of use cases than, in this case, Homer Grid is designed for behind the meter grid connected systems. All right, I think that we are reaching the end of our time. So thank you so much for your time and for staying till the end. We really appreciate your questions and your interest in both of our products. I do want to recommend reaching out to us with any questions you have about the product or about the sales opportunities, and announce that our next webinar will be in the 19th of February, and that will feature Elam, our industry partner. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you next time.